Welcome to the Next Play podcast. I'm Tommy Brown. We're overcoming mistakes in life and in athletics. Got a special guest, Adam Nelson, today. Before I introduce Adam, we're going to talk about Greg Stewart. My co-host he's got all these softball games in the spring, so he may miss a couple of these. So we definitely miss him. He brings a lot of character and kindness and all the things I don't have to the show, obviously, if you've listened. So anyway, Adam is a former two-sport athlete at Bluefield College. He actually played basketball for me for a couple years before I hightailed it out of Bluefield, and has an incredible story. He's now a big-time sales guy. He has been a professional golf pro and is got an incredible story. So, Adam, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Coach?
Doing well, doing well. I've enjoyed catching up with you. Reconnecting, which is hard to do sometimes as a coach. And I really need to do a better job of that with my former guys. So tell us your story. So you get to Bluefield College and you are a two-sport athlete, which is incredible. And
in the lightest sense of the word, but yes, go ahead.
So let's start there. Let's start at how you chose golf and basketball and how that worked in college.
Absolutely, man. So I'm from Bluefield, right? So, I mean, that's Bluefield College was interesting. If you had a little bit of athletic ability, then they would invite you to Bluefield College. They wouldn't invite you to WVU or Marshall, but they would to Bluefield College, and that's where it was easy. It was probably an 8-iron from my house. So I played basketball and I played golf in high school, worked out for you in the summer. You invited me to walk on to the basketball team there. And as I played golf, that was my scholarship sport. So yeah, that's basically it. It was a great opportunity for me to continue to play. It was a small school close to home, so didn't really have to stretch myself too much to get an education. And that's exactly where I wanted to be when I was 18.
So you graduate from Bluefield College after playing two sports. And then what happens?
So right after Bluefield College, took my PGA playability test, went down to Charlotte for a very short amount of time to work at a golf school down there called the Dana Rader Golf School. Did that, got homesick because I was from a small town and probably yet to grow up. So came back home.
So are you trying to be a professional golfer out playing or just a professional teaching pro?
At that time, I wanted to continue to play. And when you're a PGA member and you work at a golf club and teach, it gave you the opportunity to play in the section events, PGA section events, play in the state opens, things like that. And that was great for my level of play at that time. But honestly, I had a pretty good self-awareness and knew that I may be a better fit teaching because I enjoyed being around people. And I like the sport a lot. So it made sense in my early 20s to give that a shot. So I kept my PGA membership and then got a master's in the meantime. I moved back home. As I told you, I went to a golf course called Draper Valley Golf Club, which is right outside of Blacksburg, Virginia Tech area.
Yeah. And so you get hired on as a teaching professional there, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Now, how hard is it? How hard is it to be a teaching pro? I mean, how good a golfer do you have to be? What are the I shoot in the mid 90s. And I mean, that's obviously not good enough, right? To be a teaching pro.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to be able to play, right? I mean, you're not going to have any credibility if you can't break an egg and you're telling people to pay you money to teach them.
You can't fake it. You can't, I couldn't fake it. You couldn't teach me the right.
You probably could, man, because you have that conviction in your voice as a coach. I think people would buy into you for a while until they saw your golf swing. Yeah.
Hey, yeah. Did you know I was actually interim golf coach at Bluefield? Did you ever hear this story?
I've heard rumblings. Yeah.
So you could attest it. So the story is, I'm thinking it's, I guess, 2 or 3 years before you get there. And I'm thinking, I'm a big deal. I'm this basketball coach. I'm going to really teach these golfers some motivation and stuff. And so anyway, I get the job. I can't remember what happened to the previous golf coach, but they asked me to go in and be the interim guy. And I'm thinking, all right, how hard could this be? So that we go to the first tournament, it's like Tusculum, the Tusculum tournament. And I said, so we get the early flight, and the guys are like, I was like, all right, we got to be there 8:30's when we tee off. I said, what we got to be there about 8. You guys, take a couple swings. They said, Coach, we got to be there at 6:30. I go, 6:30? What are you guys talking about?
Right.
I said, I ain't getting up at 6:30. I said, you guys could drive yourself, but I had no idea how tough you had to be a golfer. And then, so I was like, guys, what do y'all want me to do? And they said, just sit at the par threes and tell us what everybody hit.
Right.
So I do that. And then I had to go, I was like, I didn't know where to go. So this one dude, like, I was like, I'm going to follow him. He really looks like he knows what he's doing. So he's walking in the woods. I'm like, okay, he's got a shortcut. And so I just follow him. I'm like right behind him. He stops and starts going to the bathroom right there in the woods. And so I was like, well, I guess this is what you do. So I just, I didn't want him to think I was stalking him. So I just went to the bathroom too. And it turns out it's the women's coach. He's the golf coach at Brescia, who ends up being one of my great friends. He's the women's coach at Lee University. That's who I was like.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, that is a long story about golf right there. But so, all right, teaching pro. I obviously, and my guys on the golf team, I get golf coach of the year because we win the conference. That's an automatic. So
do you have that on your resume?
Absolutely. So
that's
then
amazing.
When they announce it, Tommy Brown golf coach, one of our players goes, yeah, right. Like when I go up to get the plaque. I mean, how? And so I go get the plaque
on their part.
Yeah, I go get the plaque, which I don't have anymore, obviously, and I toss it in that player's lap. So anyway, there you go. So back to you on how good a golfer you have to be a golf teaching pro.
That's an amazing tangent we just went on, and I fully appreciate the fact that you got golf coach of the year, not knowing what you were doing. But there's a lot to be said for being positive and motivational. So maybe that was a part of it. But so how good do you have to be? What they do in these playability tests is they set it up 6,500 yards. It's not overly long, and they're not trying to limit their members. There's about at the time there were like 28,000 PGA pros, right? You need these people to help build the game, build the business, etc. So they set it up there. If you can shoot 75, so +6 in 36 holes, there's a high likelihood that you're going to be able to pass your playability test. And so that's kind of the benchmark that, if you're asking me how good do you have to be a teaching professional. And then beyond that, there's a lot. There's again, you're a practical psychologist, understanding how the body moves in space, how the club moves, and what the ball does. And so a lot of that is education. It's how good do you want to be as an influencer in that sport, right? And you have some really good ones, like doctors or coaches. You have really good ones that put a lot of time and energy into it, and then you have others that weren't so good. And
I've always said that really, really good players don't necessarily make good coaches. Is that the same way in the golf pro business, would you say?
I think you're probably right there. In teaching, when you're a really good player, you have to have a lot of focus on yourself and your development, what you want, your mission, your practice, everything that you do to be the next level. I mean, you look at what LeBron spends just on his body and on him. Now, he has the ability to be a good teammate. But with when you're teaching talented people, and I wanted to teach Division I athletes, I wanted to teach. I want to work on a Ferrari per se. I didn't want to necessarily spend my time fixing up, people that shoot 120. And so on that, your focus and energy is spent understanding how to communicate, how to do something to a player. Like I heard one time they said, listen, the golf swing is science, right? It's physics and geometry, but teaching it is an art. So it's the ability to take that science and apply it to the person in front of you. And so it's all about them. It's all about, and that's why I think really good golfers don't necessarily make really good coaches, because they don't have that EQ element that can really get in that student's, stuff. So
and also too, like if it comes really easy to them, or if it's something where they have worked their tail off like crazy, then I would think you would have a struggle with the guy that doesn't work hard at it too. Is that?
You're 100%. Yeah. Is that how it is in basketball too?
Well, I think that's why Larry Bird wasn't a very good basketball coach. I mean, he was a great basketball coach. He just didn't enjoy it. I think that's, why. I mean, name a great player that was a great coach too in any sport. We've done this, I think, on a couple other podcasts that I've done.
I know. I want to find that one to be a contrarian, but I can't name anybody that's really stood out. Yeah.
Like you look at the great, like Bill Belichick wasn't a great player. Nick Saban, Phil Jackson he was a grinder. Keep going. Mike Krzyzewski was a grinder. Dean Smith, grind. I don't know how good a player John Wooden was, but I mean, you just keep going. Every sport. I think Joe Torre was probably a pretty good baseball player, maybe, wasn't he? But I mean, I'm not a baseball historian.
Right. Me either. But I no, there isn't one that it's just different. I mean, there are two different philosophies and two different mentalities, I think. So.
Yeah. And so if you're a great, so I mean, we could talk about that all day. All right. So I'm fascinated by the mindset of a golfer compared to a basketball player. Maybe discuss what makes one successful. Here's my main problem in golf. And we were just chatting the other day. The harder I work at it, the worse I get. I would like to know why that is the case.
Yeah. Bad input, bad output, I guess. Like, honestly, if you can work hard at something, but all you're doing is developing a pattern, a motor pattern. And if that motor pattern doesn't lead to correct output, then all you're doing is ingraining something that is probably just setting you back, more and more. So there is a need to have somebody that has a baseline understanding of the fundamentals, so that the time you're spending, it makes sense. Like you're putting in the right time, you're building the pattern. And so it's going to lead to more consistent shots and better output.
Yeah. So in your time at Bluefield, even in both sports, I mean, what was the key to greatness in the different athletes you were around? So, I mean, because you played with some really good players on both teams.
So on basketball and golf, confidence, just self-belief, right away, competitiveness, right? Like hating to lose, being okay with winning. But I always saw the priority being not to lose, more so not to feel that pain of loss more than I did really wanting to win. That's what I like. So when I'm thinking of a great player, right, I'm thinking of a Mookie Holmes who played in my era. He was All-American and All-Conference. And so you look at a guy like that, he believed in himself a lot. And I think of somebody like a Josh Petrunger, who was our captain on our team, my first couple of years there. And the guy hit a golf ball out of the hotel room on spring break through a sliding glass door window, right? Like, just Adam Nelson wouldn't have done that. Adam would have fallen up in the fetal position if you made him do that. So that's number one. Yeah.
So where do you think that confidence comes from?
I guess it's nature nurture, right? I think repetition, having that experience and failure too, like really learning from your quote unquote failure, like learning from the negative outcomes and just doing that enough. And then the other piece of it is just having people around you telling you that you're good. And if not, try harder. Just positive reinforcement. Like, that's a real big thing.
On Mookie, I've got many stories. We could do a series on Mookie Holmes.
Am I allowed to tell one that is like totally
positive? Go ahead. Yeah. Now Mookie may listen to this. Just keep that in mind.
My buddy.
Yeah. I love him. Yeah.
So, same here. This is
So go ahead.
We're at Tennessee Wesleyan, and again, Mookie averaged 25 and 12. He was that type of player, and it was sophomore year, and it was late into the season, and they were up there in the rankings, but we were leading the conference at the time, and we had a flat first half. And I know, because I watched the entire first half, so I had a really I got to see what we were doing right or wrong there, a few seats down from you. But we go in at halftime, and you're trying to recalibrate the group, and you were upset, but you went over the stat sheet as you always did. You talked about what we had to do to adjust. And he was so worked up because he was this passionate dude that he went into the closet. I don't know if you remember this. It was the closet or the bathroom in that locker room, and he slammed the door. Well, there was no janitor on site, and it was a Saturday, and the door locked behind him. So we had our best player locked in or it was the closet, locked in the closet at halftime, and we couldn't get him out, and we didn't know how to get him out. Do you remember that or no?
What I remember is he tried to fight me at halftime. Do you remember that? Like,
yeah.
He came after me, and I was like, Mookie, I don't even know what I said to him. I didn't like get in his face, which I was prone to do, or I was just upset we were getting beat. And then all of a sudden Mookie's coming at me, trying to fight me. And
so that's really
little John Meeks is getting in between us or whoever. And I'm like, Meeks, I'm going to get killed here if you don't step it up. Cause I would have died trying, but Mookie would have killed me. Mookie was not a small, unathletic dude. I
altered the ending on that one, Coach, just because I didn't know how much I could say or not say about that one. But that's exactly what happened. He got locked in that closet.
What did I didn't lock him in the closet, did I? How did that go? The transfer from him trying to kill me, was that before? That was as we were going into the locker room.
Yeah, right? And he needed a break. He needed a timeout. Right, like because we only had so much time at halftime.
Yeah,
and he got in there and the door was slammed. That's what I recall. And the door did not open back up. And even when you tried to, you wiggled it, and kind of looked at the rest of the team, because we're already down double digits. I think we ended up coming back and winning that game, if I'm not mistaken. But
did I play Mookie the rest of the game, or like what did I do?
He came out midway through the second half. I mean, we got him out, so that's the good news. So, but yeah, I don't recall if he ended up getting in there or not. I think you did. I honestly do. I don't recall him sitting the rest of the game. So,
I mean, surely, I stuck him. He was the conference player of the year, so it wasn't like we were, this is not some average guy we're talking about, some fringe player. I mean, he averaged over, like you said, I mean, he was a double guy every game. And, the national tournament, that game we lost, I'm convinced is because that ref made that terrible call on Mookie. You remember, like I guess they had some big deal on, taunting. I mean, Mookie went up and hammers on some guy, and it kind of did a little, which was nothing in today's world.
There was a lot worse. Yeah, there was a lot worse that was done.
And so they give him a celebration technique, or they give him a tee for that, and then Mookie, I think, reacts and gets another tee. So then game over, without
10 years before reality TV got big. Think about if we had a crew that followed that group around. There were some stories in that conference.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, man.
That was funny.
Mookie, I love him. And I just remember, one of the great stories about Mookie was every halftime, he led the league in rebounding. So every halftime I would come in and I'd look at the stat sheet. Mookie, you got one rebound. You got one, and he'd have like 7 or 8, but I'd say, Mookie, and I'd do every day, every game. And he'd kind of look at me like, I can't believe I only got 1 rebound. And he'd go out there.
They're not keeping the stats right. But his girlfriend was keeping the stats,
Yeah,
so.
I was always, did you, and I know y'all knew I was lying. I know you did. So, I mean, 1 rebound, Mookie? How could you only have 1 rebound?
He was phenomenal. I mean, power forward build, but could put the ball on the floor, had a good mid-range and outside shot. He was tough.
Remember, I only let him dribble twice. I was like, Mookie, you get 2 dribbles. I said to him, Mookie, if I see you in the layup line taking more than 2 dribbles, you're not playing. Because remember, he'd get in that dribble mode, but he only needed 1 or 2 dribbles to do whatever he wanted. So,
he really did.
Oh gosh, he was something. All right, so this is almost the end of episode 1, Adam. So let's continue on the psychology of the golfer versus the basketball player. We spent 15 minutes on Mookie Holmes, and we could really spend 15 years on that. Love the guy though, so he's
100%. So basketball's more reactive. I mean, you have to have an understanding of what the goal is, your strategy, your role in the team. And so really good basketball players have understanding of all that, and they're able to react and respond to the ebb and flow of the game. So they're going to turn the ball over and they can accept that, but they have the ability to make it up very quickly, like within 35 seconds or whatever the shot clock was there on the defensive end. They can make up for that. So the reset for basketball players is much quicker than a golfer. With golf, where I think basketball players probably wouldn't do well, it is slow. I mean, it's 4.5, 5 hours minimum for competitive rounds. So the best golfers are methodical, process oriented. They don't think about wanting to win ever. They think about what the next shot is and the process they use to hit that shot. And they have the ability to kind of get in their bubble and do that for 5 hours. So that's the biggest difference.
Did you watch any of the tournament yesterday? That's going on? I mean, it's the what is it?
Genesis.
The Genesis? Yeah. Did you see the interview while he was playing Max Homa?
Oh, Max Homa, yeah.
Yeah. How about that? Was the interview with him or was the Morikawa?
Well, the last one was Max Homa, the last tournament, but I have seen they're starting to do that this year.
That's pretty cool. I like that. They've got the AirPods in, and that is really a cool little deal. So let's finish up on this story, episode 1. What'd you think of the Tiger Woods, Justin Thomas prank right there?
So, he got in trouble. They're close. Like they spend Thanksgiving and Christmas together and all that, so they're buddies. And so he handed Max a tampon after out driving him on a hole as a joke. He did it discreetly, right? But I mean, when you have a million people following you, it's going to get caught. So, but that was subtle. That's like Larry Bird trash talk.
You heard Bobby. Have you ever heard the story? Bobby Knight used to have a manager put a tampon in one of his players' locker every day. Every day, there's a guy named Daryl Thomas. Every day he'd have a manager put a tampon in his locker every day, and he literally called him the female word. That's how he addressed him as a human every day. Like he would see him in the locker, hey, and he'd call him that word.
He was a horrible person, man.
That's
pretty rough.
It was people talk about emotional abuse. I think that was a little much. We'd all agree with that. All right, so this is going to conclude episode 1. We're going to have Adam back again for the next episode. Remember, I'm going to start signing off. You're going to be the very first person to get this new sign off with the Next Play podcast. So I want everybody every day to say 3 things to themselves. Number 1, be Grundy. Number 2, failure doesn't exist. And number 3, it's not about me. So I want everybody to wake up to say those 3 things. It's not about me, be Grundy, and failure doesn't exist. So signing off, Adam, great having you, and we'll get you back here in a second. Welcome to the Next Play podcast, where we are overcoming mistakes in life and in athletics. This is part 2 of an interview with Adam Nelson. Adam played for me at Bluefield College. He's also was a professional golf pro and has a great story. So we spent the first session basically catching up, and I think it was really funny if you didn't listen to it. So here we are on session 2. We ended session 1 where Adam was a golf pro. So take us through the next steps of the transition from being a golf pro to where you are now.
Yeah, awesome. So was a teaching professional and then general manager of a golf club from 2007 to late 2011. And I thought I was going to get into counseling. Love helping people, talking to people, and trying to influence a little bit. Leadership made a lot of sense to me, but I didn't have some of the right thinking, some of the right mentality just yet. So just out of happenstance, I was teaching somebody on a driving range that was in medical device work for a company called Stryker, a biomedical company that basically sells orthopedic implants, knee, hip replacements, shoulder, also outfits hospitals. And he was like, you like to talk a lot, Nelson, and seemed to be pretty analytical. So sales may be something for you if you want to make a little bit more money and not, get a lot less sunburn. This is something you could do. And so I said, I'll give it a whirl. So I did that, started that late 2011, been working with the company since. And in different roles, from, managing sales teams, being a salesperson. And now I negotiate contracts with health systems across Eastern US. So.
Wow, that's amazing. So being a golf pro, tell us I think to the average guy, we think, oh, go to the golf course, hang out a little bit, shoot the blue, shoot the breeze, whatever, get to play free whenever you want. How is that different than maybe the average guy?
There's
Male.
some hard, yeah.
I didn't mean to say male, by the way, the average person right there.
No, I mean, it's hard. And it's a lot of hours. The idea of it is nice. You do get free golf stuff, right? You work with the manufacturers, you sell their stuff, they give you stuff. And you do play. I mean, you have to be able to play. But when it's peak season, and for Virginia, that's probably 8 months out of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's before the sun comes up until the sun comes down, and you'll get off on Mondays if you don't have tournaments, but you're not getting off on the weekends. You're working all day long.
Because Saturday and Sunday are the busiest days.
They're the busiest days, and you better be there. And so it is a lot. And I have a lot of respect for those people, especially the ones that really continue to improve and like really be a part of their craft.
And you guys got to sell stuff in the pro shop. That's all part of the deal. I mean,
you're managing a balance sheet, right? You're managing a budget. You're a salesperson, and you're teaching, you're running golf tournaments. So understanding event management, there's a lot to it. And the PGA does a really excellent job of giving you business school classes and the teaching curriculums and the things you need to be good. And they make you pay for it. It's expensive. So the net take home with as little as you get paid and how much you have to pay to maintain membership and to get all this stuff is not much.
And greens, you got to have a great greenskeeper or you're in trouble, right? Am I wrong on that? It seems like a pretty big deal to me.
I mean, we spent $0 in marketing because it's ultimately the customer, and that customer only cares about, are the greens fast? It's a course manicure. They don't care about your food per se or how stocked your shop is. It's all about that guy. Lucky for me, I had a stud. I mean, just someone that had done it for a long time, was really, really good at what he does.
Now, did that guy report to you, or how does that work at a golf course? It's fascinating.
Right. Yeah. So he was adjacent to me on the org chart. So when I was the general manager, I managed the balance sheet, but he had his own maintenance budget and he had his own employees. So that was a part of it that he managed.
So did you report to a board, or how did that work?
Yep. You're exactly right. Yeah. So a board of directors there were 5 owners at this golf club. So we meet once a month, and it was during when the golf Tiger boom had kind of subsided. And golf wasn't as popular. So rounds were going down, 2008 recession, all that kind of hit. So for being a 20-something kid that didn't know exactly what he was doing, it was a good time to be there because my failures could easily be linked to the recession and other things at that time. So,
So let's talk about, I have this whole philosophy: failure doesn't exist unless you're scared to try. So maybe, how did you go about? I mean, maybe I know you studied leadership, you've studied grit, you even got to know, was it some Navy SEALs or Army Rangers, or maybe
right. Yeah. That mentality and that what you teach is so awesome. And I think that's where you and I got connected. I started listening to your podcast, and we're friends on social media. Hadn't talked to you in a while. And I mean, that's it. Success. I heard a saying one time. They said that success is based on good decisions and execution. Good decisions oftentimes is based off of bad decisions and learning from them. And bad decisions are often from failure, right? So to be successful, there really isn't such a thing as success or failure unless you just quit, because it's always basically refining you and getting you to that point to when you will succeed. And so a lot of respect for that. For me personally, if that's what you're asking, I didn't necessarily believe what you were saying when I was in college, right after college at all, not in the workforce. It was more convenient for me to believe that it was my circumstances' fault or my boss's fault or my Coach Brown's fault or somebody else, because then I didn't have to own it. One, and then two, I kind of got rewarded for it, right? I had at the time living in a small town, right? You have the
Yeah.
politics. So as long as you just ask the right people, I was kind of getting hosed if I didn't play.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
my fault, right?
Right.
When I was in work and I went down to Charlotte as a golf professional and had to work a lot more than I thought. Well, that's
Yeah.
their fault. Like I didn't sign up for this. I have a college degree, right? And so that's that mentality of kind of learned helplessness or whatever you want to call it, where
Yeah.
you just don't embrace the fact that you got to own you and that your
Yeah.
circumstances are kind of a creature of you and you're not that of the circumstances. That
Yeah.
that's where that fundamental shift came for me in my life, was when I kind of followed what you said of like,
Yeah.
hey, there's no such thing as failure. Like, I just got to not quit. I got to dig in a little bit deeper, kind
Yeah.
of do what I wasn't doing before, learn from these failures. And that was a pivotal shift for me. It happened in my late 20s and makes life a lot easier when you have that type of mentality.
Yeah. You talk about circumstances, and sometimes ignorance is bliss, though. I've got a friend of mine. I don't even know if I'd call him a friend, but a guy that I worked with that, like, he really thinks he's really cool. He thinks thinks he's got this great life. He thinks no offense, but he thinks his wife is beautiful. There's a lot of, like, he's just not seeing it correctly. And I don't want to offend anybody as I say that, but like, he's living in this dream world. And at some point I'm like, I admire that a little bit. I'm like, he doesn't realize that he's not that cool. And he doesn't realize, it's so there's something to that. But ultimately, I think we all have to embrace responsibility or life will hit you in the head. So maybe talk about, like, give us an example of how you had to overcome, how your grit and, how you fought through some things in your life.
Yeah. No, I've got a few to choose from. So for me,
What's
like,
amazing to me is now you're almost 40, right?
yeah,
Lee, that's just incredible, because uh, it's just, I see you as a 20-year-old still. There's no way to get around that, I guess, when you coach someone, but you're 40 years old. So how about children? How are we doing? We haven't even talked about that yet. Wife, you're married. I know you're married, right?
yeah, married 12 years, got a son named Rhett, 5 years old, got a daughter that's approaching 2 named Sunny,
Yeah.
got a dog named Jerry, golden retriever.
Now is your son and daughter, are they going to be golfers or basketball players, or what are we doing? Do you just let them do what they want, I guess?
Let them do it. Like, so my son's gonna be a big kid. My wife's 6 foot tall, right? And I'm 6'4".
Really?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes. He's gonna be big. I want him to play basketball in a big way.
Yeah.
It's less costly than golf. So selfishly, that'd be awesome. But he can do whatever he wants to do. Right now, he's 5, and we got him into t-ball and into soccer, and he has pretty good attitude on him. And so
Yeah.
he didn't enjoy his first experience with sports. But this spring, I'm looking at goals to attach to the garage, and we're going to go ahead and be that dad that makes him get 100 reps in a day. I told my wife wants me to now, because I've been taking some plays off in that regard. So
that's awesome.
my daughter's going to be a hell raiser. I don't know what she's going to do, but she's going to do it full throttle.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So,
yeah.
All right. So back to the, my ADHD is kicking in. So back to the, some things you've overcome.
Yeah. Well, all growing up, I don't know if you knew this or not, but even in college, high school, I dealt with anxiety, depression in a big way, big way, like before it was cool.
Yeah.
So, and that was, some of that is environment. Some of that is just me. And when you're growing up, you can't say, well, you should own it, right? Because depression, anxiety, they're mental illnesses, no question. And
yeah.
But I did not believe that I had the ability to do anything about it other than medication. That was my thought. And I'm a Christian, so even the hand of God and medication are kind of the two options I have, but nothing that Adam Nelson would need to do per se to change that. And that influenced how I behaved in college as an athlete, as a friend, as a student, everything. And it carried with me because I never really drew a line in the sand.
And you probably came out of the womb speaking in complete sentences. So you were able to verbally mask that because you were you may be the most gifted verbally athlete I ever had. Like, I mean, there was never a time where you weren't able to, you probably could have talked your way out of you could
I
probably,
did.
we could do a podcast on you talking your way out of trouble, I'm sure. And, but anyway, so I'm sure, and I believe too, you can be mentally tough without being mentally healthy. Those are two different things, really. So anyway, keep going. I'm
That's a
sorry.
good distinction. That's a great point. And I mean, I actually probably need to say that. Like, I do think I was mentally tough.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's fatiguing when you carry
Yeah.
that for a long time and you see that your friends don't necessarily deal with that stuff or
Yeah.
whatever. Like it wears on you. And so that is where I think a grit came from, is I was blessed early on to deal with that stuff so much, so
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
that's where grit in a lot of people comes from. Like I was dyslexic, so I mean, I had to figure it out,
you had
and
yeah.
and it wasn't where, I mean, we didn't have all these, programs in place. I mean, I just basically got to college with a, first grade reading level, and so. But anyway, keep going.
No, I mean, I think that is right. Like, and so for me, yeah, I had that, and I'm glad that I had that. Um, the one piece that I didn't have was probably uh, believing that I had the ability to create change,
Yeah.
believing that it was my responsibility to. So how do you create change? Well, you can do medicine,
Yeah.
therapy, faith-based systems. I mean, there's a number of things that you can do, which I did a little bit of. One thing that I really didn't do was own my thinking, own my body. You bring up body language a lot too,
Yeah.
your physiology. So owning how I carried myself, my belief system, and the words that I use.
Yeah.
Were they helping me or hurting me? And so
Yeah.
I just think over time, I constantly finished second at things or constantly got overlooked at promotion. When I
Yeah.
was like, wait a minute, I do speak well. I'm in sales and I'm speaking well and I work hard, but I'm
Yeah.
not getting what this guy's getting. So
Right.
it's my boss's fault. I'm not getting
Right.
right. And then just there was a 2013, 14.
Yeah.
I was like, I was sitting on my couch. I'd been married for a couple of years, and wife and I were going through some hard times. And I was like, well, it's her fault too.
Yeah.
Because
Because marriage is easy.
it's that's what I understood it to be, right? So she had went, somewhere on the weekend, and I was at home, um, and really just started. I was at rock bottom, I guess the best way to say it. I was, you know, anxiety through the roof,
Yeah.
and bad spot with my faith and all that. And I was just like, I'm kind of tired of this, and I've tried everything already. I felt like I had. What else am I going to do, right? Well, I watched the TED talk that Tony Robbins did.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was doing a TED talk, and he just talked about basically like, hey, raise your standards, change your think, like, and he did it with so much like firepower
Passion. Yeah.
that I was like, well, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole because I really hadn't thought about changing my mentality and owning
Yeah.
it myself. I thought it was just this thing that I'm going to deal with forever, like Job's plot, like this is what I'm
Yeah.
gonna do.
Yeah.
And man, I hit it hard, like no extra time. If I was working out, well, I did every
Yeah.
day. I was listening to an audio book about something from a leader,
Yeah.
from Jocko, from Tony
Yeah.
Robbins. Like, just I went down the list and just was buying books and listening to them while I was working out. When I was in the car, I was doing affirmations. I would literally put a pencil in my mouth as I was driving to a sales meeting to smile, to change my physiology. I was like, I'm going to
Wow.
overload this thing to the
Wow.
extent that I'm going to completely rewire myself.
Wow.
And it made some changes. One more note on that, and then I'll shut up because I get passionate about this part of it. But there was a guy named Dr. Deepak Chopra. He is a neuroscientist, MD, and he's like from East. He does some Eastern medicine stuff now, but he
Yeah.
had this book called Super Brain, and that was one of those that I listened to at that time. And he said everything in your body, from your skin, like everything physical, to a cellular level, after a certain amount of years, and it was like 7 or 10 years, has completely oxidized or died off, and you
Yeah.
have something new from a material standpoint in you. So those cells that make up your brain, which helps make up your thoughts,
Yeah.
are completely not the same they were 10 years ago. So why are you holding on to
Yeah.
who you were at a certain point in your life? Because you materially, you're not that person anymore. And
That
that
is
was,
powerful. That's
isn't that
awesome.
powerful?
That
Like
is
as a
amazing.
player, when
Yeah.
you're told something that's been banging over your head for so long, and you
Yeah.
just realize the only thing that's keeping you there is just belief. It's your
Yeah.
spirit and your mentality, but everything else
Wow.
isn't the same. So that
Yeah.
really freed me up to be like, man, I can actually kind of organize and orchestrate who I want to be.
Have you ever heard my expression that I use of babysitting your own BS?
No,
Babysitting
but
your
that
own
sounds
bull.
awesome.
Yeah. So I do a great job of babysitting mine, all the BS in my head, when we really just need to flush it out. I mean, like I feed my BS. I am a great babysitter, but it's just not doing me any good. And that's powerful the way you describe that. And my mom tells me the reason why I say the word BS out in clinics because I don't have a very good vocabulary. But anyway, so that's good. Oh, I love that though. Man, so where can we find this again? What was the guy?
Yeah, Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Yeah,
Yeah, so he contributes to a couple of news stations too. He's a pretty big guy. Again, now he's into holistic medicine
yeah,
because he did the acute care and treated illness through medicine and stuff like that for a long time. And then once he kind of went down this other path, and there's a lot to be said for it. I mean,
yeah,
secular physicians, and then obviously in the Christian worldview, it
yeah,
aligns with so much of what the Bible says too. So it checked out for
yeah.
me, right? We're
Everybody,
constantly
what
renewed.
maybe this is I listened to a podcast with it was a bit of optimism with Simon Sinek, which I do the same thing now. Like I am literally I've got Tony Robbins, John Gordon, Simon Sinek. It's just this rotation, and
Yep.
it's all this positive stuff I'm trying to put in my head. And also I teach it almost every day, so that helps me.
Yep.
Because if I don't, I'm just gonna let the BS grow in my head. But this guy on Simon Sinek's podcast was talking about how medicine is like when you're a doctor, trained as a doctor, you're just trained to, treat. You're not trained to prevent. And that's our whole mindset is treating rather than preventing. So I'm sure there was some,
You nailed it. That's
yeah,
exactly, and I mean that literally is what he says. It's preventative medicine, the holistic side. So yeah, that's in a
yeah.
nutshell. That's how he shifted his mentality. And I mean, those
No,
data points though, that it helps you know what I mean? Because you can have
yeah,
the motivational sayings and the theory, but when it gets down to a physical level and you can basically explain that,
yeah,
hey, there's no reason for holding on to some of this bondage or these belief systems that are keeping you from being the best version of yourself, whether it's a player, professional, or family
yeah,
member. Powerful
yeah.
stuff.
Man, that's cool. That's great stuff. So what would you say to a college athlete? Let's say you're talking to a 21-year-old golfer basketball player at a small college in a small town that is been a big deal, always been a popular guy. Maybe they're struggling with some issues no one knows about, which is everybody. What would you say to that individual?
Man, um, I would probably say when if you focus more on others,
Yeah,
um, and you really hone in on the discipline of gratitude
yeah,
and hard work, then I think a lot of the insecurity, which I had a lot, and I'm talking to myself, right? A lot of that insecurity,
yeah,
a lot of the self concern about why you're not getting what you want or doing what you want, because that's a stage in life where you're trying to make something of yourself and you're trying to be something and you're not quite sure how to do it yet, but you're being directed by coaches and teachers.
yeah,
If you just know that, hey, when I'm getting in that negative mindset and that negative thinking, focus on others. If I can invest more value and more time into the people around me, into my teammates,
yeah,
then it's going to return to me in a greater proportion.
yeah,
That's probably what I would tell them, because I mean, you look at Steve Jobs, right? You
yeah,
look at You look at Jeff Bezos,
Yeah.
like some of the wealthiest people in business. Well, what did they do? Right? They just gave more value at a greater scale to anybody through the iPhone, the Mac, and Amazon.
Sure.
So I think that's the secret to success is what can you do for those people around you? Double down on that now, and find 5 people that are better than you, whether they're mentors or peers at something that you're doing, and hone in on that, because success leaves clues.
Yeah, you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with most. That's another
100%.
saying that I use. How about learning from mistakes? How would you recommend? How do we? I mean, I am 100% all about redefining failure. It's just, I wish I had implemented this earlier in my life. And I think when I was your age, 10 or 15 years or 10 years ago, I was so bitter at the unfairness of the way Lee University treated me at times that I literally, and part of the problem was I come from Bluefield, where I was kind of a island of excellence in a sea of mediocrity. No offense to anyone there.
You were the dude. Yeah.
There were a lot of beautiful people there, great people, but I get to Lee, and whatever I did, it just seemed never it was good enough. And so I allowed myself to get bitter about that. And life's not fair. It's not going to be fair. So maybe a way you've overcome some of the unfairness of life, you having those anxiety issues, depression issues. I mean, 1 in 7 women get breast cancer. I mean, whatever it is, so maybe talk on that a little bit. Help these young people out that are going to go through it.
Yeah, I think when you're unhappy or you're bitter or you experience failure, it's basically because your outcome or where you are now doesn't align to your blueprint. So how you think life should be. Yeah. Right. So that's where unhappiness comes from, because you expect it to be a certain way and it's not that way. So you have 3 options. I did option 1. We talked about that earlier on the show, which is you can blame somebody else. You can blame your circumstances. And that's one option. 2, you can change your tactics and what you're doing day in and day out to help control the situation. Or 3, you can change your goal. Yeah. Right. So you can just, and so 2 and 3 are very reasonable for anybody. Yeah. Meaning, as an example, I didn't get a lot of playing time because, quite frankly, I wasn't that gifted. I was gifted at a certain level, not gifted at a collegiate level in basketball. I wasn't golf, not at basketball. Yeah. I could blame you or my teammates, right? I could work harder, lift weights, get faster laterally, the things that I was asked to do from coaches, right? Or I could try another sport. I could do something else, right? So I think if you hone in on 2 and 3, if you have a goal and you have a passion about something like a sport, then 3 is probably not reasonable, and 1's not reasonable, but 2 is. You always have the opportunity to do 2.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'll tell you what, let's finish up on that, because that's a very powerful thought. This has been amazing. I knew it would be when I was talking to you the other day. I'm so proud of you, and I hate that we haven't, it's been so long since we've connected. But so this has been the Next Play podcast. I promise to the listeners we will have Adam back. We'll invite him back on a regular basis. And remember to be Grundy, and failure does not exist, and it's not about you. Say those 3 things to yourself every day. Thank you so much, Adam. Thanks again, buddy.
Thanks, Coach.